So yes, men and women both have mammary glands. So what's the difference? Well, we saw that they have the ducts and the differences in size, but the big difference is that when do mammary glands develop? They typically develop during puberty. So before puberty, they're pretty much identical in boys and girls before they undergo puberty. So they have the basic structure of an undeveloped mammary gland, but it's the changes in puberty that cause the development of mammary glands. Now, what happens is that you have an increase in estrogens and progestogens when you start off the menstrual cycle, and a girl has her first menarche, her first menstrual cycle. That's when you start to have that cyclical waves of estrogens and progesterone. But what happens in male puberty is that you have increased levels of androgens. You do have some estrogens and aromatase as well, but this is the thing, like you don't get high levels of androgens in female development as you do in male development. So androgens, they can be converted to aromatase, but androgens actually suppress the development of mammary glands. So again, sometimes you do get occasional estrogen spillover, and sometimes this does cause what we call gynecomastia in men. And what happens is that you can get puffiness. I didn't get this personally, but I've heard like some boys who undergo puberty, they have swollen or tender breasts because of this increased estrogens and due to aromatase. But usually this is temporary. So as a woman undergoes or undergoing puberty, she undergoes multiple menstrual cycles. These estrogens and the surge in estrogens and progesterone are going to cause the development of breast tissue and mammary glands. And so these ducts are going to branch off and form more lobules. And as we have the menstrual cycle every month, this is going to cause the development of more branches and lobules until we have a developed mammary gland. But again, what's happening in the male breast over here, with the androgens, this keeps in check. So again, this doesn't eliminate the mammary gland altogether. It's just undeveloped in typical male anatomy. With mammary gland structure, so what we have are basically mammary glands are a network of ducts, but also the two basic components of a mammary gland are ducts and lobules. So ducts are just like a duct that carries air or any sort of vent. These instead carry milk. So estrogens actually stimulate the development of these ducts that carry milk in the mammary glands. So yeah, so these estrogens like estradiol, they're going to cause the formation and branching of these ducts. Now lobules, these are the ones that actually produce milk. So what progesterone is actually stimulates the development of lobules and what these structures we call alveoli. Now, not the same thing as the alveoli in our lungs, but alveoli refers to anything that's kind of like that ball or grape shape. So these alveoli, these contain cells that will eventually secrete and produce milk when a woman lactates. So then again, so progesterone promotes development of lobules, estrogens promote the formation of ducts. And hey, what two hormones are the primary female sex hormones? Progestogens and estrogens. All right, so then that's what happens here. So as you have all this estrogens and progesterone, this causes the development of the mammary gland in the female anatomy. And this is what we have here. So again, estrogens and progesterone. Now the interesting thing is that at this point, like post-puberty, the breasts aren't actually fully developed. Something special has to happen before a breast is actually fully developed. And what has to happen is that this needs to happen. Hey, we have an egg and something's going to happen to that egg. Oh, we have someone sneaking in here and fertilizing that egg. And say it's a successful fertilization and implantation. And now we finally have a fetus growing in here. So what has to happen before a breast is fully developed is that you have to be pregnant. Now what happens during pregnancy? Many things happen during pregnancy, but what happens to the concentration of estradiol and progesterone is that they actually go through the roof. They actually go higher than they ever would during a typical woman's menstrual cycle. So they keep climbing. As estrogens and progesterone start to climb, then they're going to get development of more ducts and more lobules. So what's that going to do? Well, that's going to cause more development of more tissue. So this is why in a typical pregnancy, a woman will have initial growth in the mammary glands. So that's what we have. So yeah, those estrogens and progesterone, which are the hormones that drive the development of mammary glands, they're going to drive the further development of mammary glands in anticipation for when the woman gives birth, pregnant, when she undergoes labor and starts breastfeeding, it prepares the breast for that additional tissue they need to feed their child. Okay, so then, now just in general, so the single duct can have multiple lobes and each has what we call a lactiferous duct. So again, these lobules are going to make the milk that's going to be lactated, and you need something to carry it out to the external environment to feed the baby. And this is a lactiferous duct, and and also just before the duct, it has something called the lactiferous sinus. So it's not just like constantly dripping. You can actually store a bit of this in the sinus, and then we don't have time for the milk letdown reflex. I think we did cover it, maybe in the endocrine system and positive feedback, but there's about 15 to 20 sinuses per nipples. So that's what we have here, all these lobules, all these ducts, and then in a pregnant woman's breast tissue, what we have during lactation. Well, there's also another protein a protein and hormone called prolactin. So prolactin is actually going to trigger the production of milk. And then through the milk letdown reflex and production, you're going to have this ejection of this milk, and this is how you breastfeed. Now, the thing is this permanent? Well, no, it's not permanent. The thing is that if, say, a woman likes it and she wants to keep it, well, the thing is that once she gives birth, then these levels of progesterone and estrogen, they come crashing back down, or I shouldn't say crashing back down. They come back down to the normal levels they were during the menstrual cycle. So without this additional estrogens and progesterone, this doesn't allow them to keep the extra tissue that they have. So this process is called involution. So this is why once a woman gives birth and she doesn't have these high levels of estradiol and progesterone, the breasts return to normal, or actually in terms of like the shape may have changed, like multiple things might have changed, but the size and mass of these lobules and these glands don't remain.